and also the changes that you've experienced as members in dealing, in addition to the changes that you've experienced as a result of those changes, not just from the 1st of January this year, but also as a result of the implementation of the Trade and Cooperation Agreement between the UK and the EU that's commenced on the 1st of January 2021. We're delighted to have colleagues here from both government and the private sector to go through some of those changes with you today, and also just to remind you of some of the important administrative and other issues that you would need to be addressing in terms of your customs and exporting work that you are undertaking. We have a number of presentations here today, and we will go through those very shortly. And halfway between those presentations, we will also have a short polling questions for you to complete as well. At the end of the presentations, we will also be encouraging you to ask questions of our panelists on the subject matter that you've heard. I'm Richard Romblow. I'm Head of Director of International Trade and Member Relationships here at Make UK. And I'm delighted to welcome, first of all, Keith Robe, who is going to run through some of the key aspects of the changes that have taken place and some of the factors that you should be looking at. And lastly, we'll pass on to Hmrc, who will also be adding their significant contribution to the conversation here this afternoon. Keith, over to you.
Thanks, Richard. I'll just get my screen up for sharing and run through the presentation for you. Bear with me 1 second. Okay, I'll take myself off video. Makes it a little bit easier. Okay, well, welcome. Good afternoon. We're looking at some of the developments, the further developments, if I can put them that way, in customs processes and procedures for 2022. Obviously, when we very first left the EU in one way, shape or form from the 1st of January last year, 2021, there were some facilitations and some key changes to what you needed to do in order to meet customs regulations and requirements. That has changed again in 2022, mainly in the form of removal of a lot of the relaxations, not all of them, but a lot of the relaxations that the government introduced to facilitate the first 12 months of us leaving the customs union. Just a little bit about me. My name's Keith Robe. I'm Managing Director of CusDec Customs Solutions, customs consultancy business. My background is that I worked for HM Customs and Excise and latterly Hmrc for well over 30 years, having left about 5 years ago to start CusDec Customs Solutions. My roles within Hmrc were varied across those years, I'm sure, as you could imagine, but I specialised in authorised economic operator, the trusted trader status that is around and still being mentioned by politicians. On the international front, I've done some work for both Hmrc abroad, whilst I was with them, and EU Customs, representing EU Customs in the US on their CT-PAT, AEO, mutual recognition agreements, together with some work as CusDec in the Middle East and the Caribbean on customs modernisation programs. So just a little bit about where I'm coming from with regard to customs matters and customs background. So what we're looking at here today, some of it is very basic. I need to keep it basic, and in the time that we have, unfortunately can't go into too much details and cover all of the subject matter that might be changing in this coming year, or has changed from the 1st of January. But we look at the Iori number, the Economic Operator Registration and Identification number, the Global Tariff, the UK's Global Tariff, Customs Declarations in general, a subject that is regularly part of my daily and weekly routine around the Trade and Cooperation Agreement between the UK and the EU Rules of Origin. We look at customs compliance because that will be coming to the fore in the coming months and certainly in the coming years, and briefly look at customs civil penalties, some of the penalties that Hmrc might impose should they find that you have been non-compliant. So very basic stuff: economic operator and registration and identification number, commonly referred to as the Iori number. If you're importing goods into the UK or exporting goods from the UK, you must have an Iori number. An import or export declaration would not be accepted by Chief as we speak without a valid Iori number. For those VAT registered businesses, it's GB followed by your 9-digit VAT registration number with 3 zeros on the end. Now, ultimately, Northern Ireland, which I don't touch on too much in this particular session, because of its unique status, you will require a NI, XI, Iori number if you're sending goods into Northern Ireland. The EU are maintaining some presence and controls over goods going into Northern Ireland from Great Britain, and the XI Iori number gives them that identification number, which again can be used across the EU, whereas since the 1st of January last year, the GB Iori number is no longer acceptable in the other 27 member states that remain in the EU customs union. So must have an Iori number in order to make your customs declarations. Now, the UK Global Tariff, since we left the EU and the customs union, UK has had to come up with its own UK tariff with commodity codes, duty rates, VAT rates, etc. It's online, and it's one of HMRC's more user-friendly facilitations. It's quite an easy tool to use. You can see at the bottom there, the www.gov.uk trade tariff. That's the link that will take you to that page. And if you have an inkling of the commodity code, or you simply have a brief description of the goods or the name of the goods, you can enter it in that search box and it will give you the options around. Certainly if you only have a description, it will give you the options around that commodity code. It's very, very important to get the classification, as it's referred to, the commodity code of your goods accurate. That's the starting point for everything else that develops, whether it be establishing a customs value for an import, for example, or whether, as we'll see later on, you're looking for some kind of preference duty rate for an import based on the rules of origin under the EU Trade and Cooperation, the UK EU Trade and Cooperation Agreement. It's key that you get your commodity code correct. It's one of the key areas. Now, the UK Global Tariff has been developed in recent weeks and months. Additional information tabs have been added onto there. You can now, if you have the commodity code, put it in the search box and you'll find, if you scroll down the page a little while, you'll find an import tab giving you all the details of if you're importing this particular commodity code and what that means by way of duty, whether you need license, the VAT rate, etc. Similarly, for exports, there's an export tab. There are some notes as well, which give you some feel for the classification of the goods, those goods, and possibly some of the exceptions. But one of the new additions is that it will also give you the rule of origin, depending on the free trade agreement that you're looking to get information from. So that's relatively new, and it's a good first glance from the online tariff to give you an idea of whether your goods can claim a preferential duty rate on import because of the free trade agreement. Now, the tariff itself is almost a mirror image of the EU's tariff when you're looking at commodity codes themselves, although they have changed just slightly very, very recently. By description, very, very similar. The main difference is that the UK global tariff has a vast quantity of nil rates of duty, which the EU tariff does not have. So it's important not to get confused when looking at, if you're looking at costs for moving goods into the EU, you need to look at the EU's tariff, not the UK online global tariff, and vice versa. If you're bringing goods into the UK GB, then you need to look at the UK global tariff. That's one of the key areas, and some areas where I've been talking to businesses where they've just looked up the UK Global Tariff to try to establish what the duty rate might be for the goods that they're sending to one of the 27 member states that remain. Don't make that mistake, but it's a very useful tool. I think it's around 87% of all goods on that tariff have a nil rate of duty for import into the UK. A very, very key area, and I'll come on to that again just ever so slightly when we talk about compliance. Customs declarations. Now, the big change here for UK importers is that full customs controls came into play from the 1st of January this year. This means that the facilitation of delayed declarations has ended from the 1st of January this year. All imports and exports need a full customs declaration. And you can see there, I've just briefly mentioned that there is an exception, an ongoing exception at the moment for movement between Great Britain and Northern Ireland and Ireland, which is continuing to be discussed. And you can still use the delayed declarations for those movements. But anything coming from the EU into the UK must now be supported by a full import declaration. It's the second, I suppose, third stage perhaps of the imposition of the UK customs taking control of the movement of goods by way of declarations. But there's a further stage coming along in July when it looks at new requirements for safety and security declarations, health certificates, etc., phytosanitary certificates. So there's another stage coming. But for a non-controlled goods, basic goods coming into the UK, a full customs declaration needs to be made for goods entering the UK, BB, I should say. I'll briefly touch on Northern Ireland. If you're making supplies of goods to Northern Ireland, then you do need to sign up for what is called the Trader Support Service, TSS, which is a free service been in force since January of last year. And it basically does all the hard work for you because of the unique status of Northern Ireland, with having one foot in the EU's customs union and one foot in the UK side. If you're moving goods into Northern Ireland, then please sign up for the Trader Support Service. In order that you can make your customs declaration. It provides information and advice. It does the declaration on your behalf, and it's quick and has no extra charge to you as a business moving goods across there. So for all of that, delayed declarations have gone. But don't forget, if you have been involved in making delayed declarations, even if you have gone beyond the 175 days by which you should have submitted the supplementary declaration, please check and make sure that if you've got anything outstanding, that you chase up and submit supplementary declarations for any of those delayed declarations as soon as you possibly can, in order to avoid any complications in the future. Now, the UK-EU Trade and Cooperation Agreement, TCA, as it's often and commonly referred to, this, I must admit, is taking up quite a lot of my time at the moment in inquiries, both from Make UK members asking about their particular products and whether they can take advantage of the preference rules, and outside of Make UK. So it's keeping me very busy at the moment. And in essence, for those of you who may not have seen it, it's quite a heavy document, around about 1,250 pages. It covers obviously the customs and the movement of goods, but that 1,250 pages or so is not just related to customs. It deals with services and intellectual property, law enforcement arrangements, etc. But there are huge elements in there which involve customs. Now, the main benefit from the customs front is around the origin of the goods. And when I mentioned in the previous slide about making sure that your classification, your commodity code, was correct and accurate. It has a knock-on effect when you're trying to look at the TCA and establish whether you're able to claim under the EU trade agreement, EU-UK trade agreement, preference. I should point out at this time that there are other free trade agreements which are in place that the UK has signed, and quite a few are in the pipeline. But I'm concentrating on the UK EU one because that's the focus point really of all of the enquiries I'm getting. It's the most important as I speak. Now, going back to the commodity code, the TCA document itself has in there product, what I referred to as product specific rules. Those rules highlight the first digit of any commodity code that you might be supplying, and it tells you what the rule is, which will enable you to classify those goods as being of UK origin, for example. Now, they're all different. Many of them are the same, but you have to, there are lots of different rules, especially around fabrics and clothing, etc. But a lot of them, just to give you a very brief taste, if you were manufacturing some goods in the UK and you are using products from various different sources, that includes the EU and third countries around the world, the TCA, the product specific rule for your goods, may well say that in order to change the origin of those goods for your final product, you may have to change the tariff heading. In other words, whatever materials and components go into the finished product, you have to change the tariff heading. If you do that, you can change the origin of those goods to being of UK origin. The other common area is based on the value, and that is where the maximum non-originating value of the goods, and that is the goods which are neither of EU or UK origin. You have to be able to prove both of those areas by origin statements. Then providing the ex-works price of the product that you're selling does not contain more than 50% of non-originating goods. That is another rule that you may be able to change the origin of the goods to UK. But the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, if it's something you're being hit with, especially with regard to movement of goods into the EU, for example, and your customers are finding that they're having quite expensive duty rates applied to those goods, then it's always worthwhile finding the commodity code of your goods, going into the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, matching the first 4 digits of those commodity codes, and seeing what the rules of origin are for those particular goods. Because if you can meet those origin rules, then you can either get relief for the goods that you're importing under that agreement, but also your customers can save money on their goods. Just to reiterate, it's a bilateral agreement. It's only between the EU and the UK at the moment. I don't know that there's any changes envisaged to that, but at the moment, only goods from the UK and the EU qualify as originating. Just to stress also that originating does not necessarily mean the place from whence the goods were dispatched. So if you're buying goods from the EU, don't assume that they were actually manufactured in the EU, because the origin is different to where those goods were actually dispatched from. Could well be that Chinese goods were sent into France, for example, and you're buying those products from France. If nothing's happened to change the origin, those goods remain of Chinese origin. So it's just worthwhile checking the preferential duty rates and the product-specific rules within the Trade and Cooperation Agreement. Customs compliance, and I've touched on a couple of these areas. If you've taken advantage, and I've highlighted these areas of transitional delayed declarations that previously mentioned, the rules state that you should have made an entry in your records at the time that those goods were imported. My experience has been that it hasn't always been happening. One way or another, either a disconnect between the carrier and you as the importer, for example, and this rule hasn't been followed. It's important that you have a root and branch look at entries goods that came in the 12 months ending the 31st of December 2021, to make sure that you've made some kind of entry and your carrier asks what they've been doing on your behalf. So you have to have complied with those rules. The regulations state, or the rules state, that you must make a supplementary declaration if you have used the delayed transitional delayed declaration within 175 days of the goods entering your records. And the goods should have entered your records at the time that they crossed into the UK border. I think there was a 24-hour allowance there that you should make it. So you only had 175 days after the goods arrived. Now, the word I'm hearing, and perhaps Claire from Hmrc might be able to expand on that, is Hmrc are looking at the moment and gearing up for compliance audit. COVID has disrupted a lot of face-to-face kind of audits and indeed perhaps even the ability of Hmrc staffing-wise to carry out audits whilst they were working from home. But they are gearing up for compliance audits, and as well as making sure that the supplementary declarations and transitional and delayed declarations have been covered, it's key that you have a review, make sure you've classified the goods that you're importing correctly. One of the key areas that any customs audit will follow. Evaluation of the goods, both on import and export, but of course on import, if there's a positive duty rate, then any errors in that area may be costly to you as a business, in the sense that if you're owing import duty where you perhaps thought there was none, then it's key that you look at that. And the third aspect I would suggest is key, is that you look at the origin of the goods, not just for preferential purposes, but check that you've got sufficient, or you've carried out sufficient due diligence on the origin of those goods, and ask to your supplier where those goods actually originate from within that supply chain. And those are some of the key areas that you should, and I would recommend you looking back on and saying, okay, we're getting to the stage now where Hmrc might be starting to choose customs audits and get in touch with you to have a look at how things have been going over the last 3 years, and Hmrc will go back 3 years essentially. It's good practice to have looked at that and done your checks and balances before that actually happens. There's lots of detail in the border operating model, which has been published in 2020 and gives a lot of detail about customs and how things changed since the UK left the EU, including different stages of changes. So yeah, customs compliance is going to be quite a big thing in the coming months and years, I would suggest. Maybe not months, but certainly years, whilst the dust is settling down. And it's always good practice to go back and make sure you're getting copies of customs entries, for example, from your carriers and freight forwarders, so that you can check what's being done in your name. If you're the importer, it's your Iori number that's allocated on the import declaration, and that's what Hmrc will be looking at. They'll choose the Iori number, they'll come to you if you're shown as the importer, and expect you to have all of your evidence and calculations in place whilst that audit is carrying on. So I think this is going to be a key component moving forward, certainly perhaps towards the end of this year and maybe into 2023. Sort of moving on from that, I wouldn't say that the customs civil penalties for non-compliance are there and always going to be imposed at these kind of levels, but it's just to give you a heads up really as to what's happening or what potentially could happen if you haven't made any effort to put your customs procedures and processes in order. And civil penalties can be levied and adjusted in some ways, depending on the amount of due diligence HMRC allocates to what the processes you've put in. So the more work you've done to try and abide by the customs rules and regulations, perhaps the lower the penalty. But if they've seen that you haven't done anything, and with this point, perhaps I should have mentioned on the customs compliance slide, leaving certain aspects of a customs declaration to your forwarder and carrier historically has been something that's perfectly good practice. In a lot of ways, they are the experts in and can help with classification and can help with valuation and other aspects of a customs declaration. But always bear in mind that it's you as the importer and your Iori number that HMRC will come to. So my recommendation to everybody that I speak to on compliance and in other aspects when they're looking at certain customs facilitations is to build in regular management checks of what your carriers and agents are doing on your behalf, and check that they're following your instructions through. Mistakes can be made, and it's good from an HMRC point of view if you're checking for those errors before they actually come along and you're doing it on a regular basis. It all helps with the compliance side of it. But as it says there, I suppose if you take it to the extreme, they can impose a £2,500 penalty per contravention. And that can be down to some of the fine detail and the nitty-gritty of lines on a customs declaration, for example. It doesn't, if they find one, if there's half a dozen declarations which are in error, and it can be seen that you've not paid any attention to that, then they could impose you. So these are quite significant charges. And again, they would be for significant irregularities where they could see that it really did impact the type of goods and the value of the goods and the commodity code of the goods that you're imposing. For lesser irregularities where it's simply a mistake, again, if they can't see that there's been any due diligence carried out at all, then it can be £1,000 per contravention. And the bottom line there is, and again, over the last 2 years, voluntary disclosures. I've been involved in several voluntary disclosures. You find the error that has been made either by your forwarder or agent, whoever's making your customs declaration on your behalf, or whether it's something you've discovered yourself. You can make a voluntary disclosure to HMRC and say, yeah, okay, hands up, we've made this mistake. There is a process to follow, and you can find that on the gov.uk website, and a form to fill in to let HMRC know that. But in those circumstances, what would happen is you would voluntarily disclose the value of the irregularity and pay any duty that might have been due, but it will mitigate any penalty. It will mean because you've came up, put your hands up, should I say, to the error. And essentially, that's part of working with HMRC. They like to see that you are taking care of what's happening with your import and export declarations. You're making sure you're paying the right duties and taxes at the right time. And if you can demonstrate that, it makes your life a lot easier, especially when you're coming through to the audit. And essentially, I've mentioned there, HMRC are gearing up for a return to audit for UK importers and exporters. And the likelihood of an audit will be or is certainly increasing on that front. So I suppose I've covered some of the areas of the changes for 2022. I think, as I said at the outset, there are quite a lot of details that could go into for that particular area, but in the time span that allowed, it was just to pull out the important things that might impact your business. But of course, Make UK, and I'm the customs consultant aligned with Make UK, as well as all of the other staff that would be able to help you with these issues. But customs wise, nitty gritty wise, you can get in touch with Make UK. I'm doing quick calls to resolve queries. I've just been organising one before I came on this particular webinar to speak to one of the Make UK members, see what it is the particular problem is, have a chat with them and see if there's any consultancy, follow-up consultancy required, which is of more specific and detailed to the individual business. Customs training and development, if you're looking for some training on customs aspects, all aspects of customs processes and procedures, special procedures, options to mitigate costs, some of the areas that are freely available from customs that will help you reduce the costs to your business of imports or supplies to your customers, and help things move a little bit more quickly. And if you have made any inroads in looking at application forms with Hmrc and you felt this is something that we could benefit from, then following on from a consultancy, for example, it's not uncommon for me to supply assistance with the application forms and the full process themselves. So there we have the Make UK helpline details on there with a telephone number, and of course the Make UK hub is also on there. And I believe, Richard, that the slide set will be made available to the people who are attending here today. So with that, I suppose that's me actually done.
Lovely, thank you, Keith. Very helpful explanation of the changes that have taken place, and also the steps that firms should be making themselves familiar with, both in terms of exporting and importing, but also the important parts of the customs administration process, which need to be followed. Please do keep coming forward with your questions. We will get to those later on. I'm glad that people are taking up that option, but if you have questions, do submit them and we'll come to them in due course. Just ahead of colleagues from Cabinet Office and Hmrc coming forward, we do just want to run a quick poll. So Chris will now put up that poll and please respond to it. While you're doing that, we do have Shahim Ahmed and also Claire from Hmrc and Shahim from Cabinet Office. Shahim will lead off very shortly after the polling questions and give a perspective as to how government is approaching this and the requirements as well. And then we'll go into the formal question and answer session. But in front of you, you've got some polling questions. Thank you, Chris, for putting those up, and please respond to those accordingly from now. Thank you. Chris, I'm beginning to see some of the results coming in. Just let us know when you think we've completed that poll, please.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. We'll just leave it for another minute or so, and thank you everybody for filling in our poll. It's really, really useful information, both for Make UK, but also Cabinet Office and Hmrc colleagues on the call, and hopefully back to you guys, and also finding out how other organisations are faring with all the things that Keith's discussed as well. And just to reiterate, all responses are anonymous and won't be shared either. So just give it another 20 more seconds or so. We're still getting a few responses. Okay, so we'll go from there. And Richard, can you see those responses?
I can broadly see them, I'm afraid. I haven't got entirely good picture quality where I am, but I think certainly question.
That's fine. Do you want me to go through them quickly? So,
yes, would you mind?
So in the first question, this was particularly of interest to Cabinet Office colleagues who wanted to know whether you'd successfully moved goods from the EU to GB since the 1st of January. Just over a third saying yes, successfully moved without any problems, but 40% have successfully moved goods, but minor problems, and 14% having significant issues, and a small proportion there, less than 10%, have not moved any goods. I experienced disruption due to the new EU to UK import custom controls, which Keith described earlier. Just over half there, 52%, ironically saying yes. How confident are you in your organisation's understanding of custom controls for the UK to EU trade? The largest answer there being nearly half are confident, which is really good, but there's still a proportion there unsure at 35%, and really good to see that a very small minority are unconfident. Following the new border arrangements introduced this year, have you seen delays at the EU-UK border? So 16% saying no delays, 66% slight delays, and 18% with significant delays. And in regards to costs, 75% of you have seen increase of costs for shipments to and from the EU. Nobody's seen a decrease, and 25% have had no change at all. In terms of whether you have been audited by Hmrc for your customs procedures, 17% saying yes, but the vast majority, 83%, saying no. And then quite a large proportion, around half, looking for greater consultancy support, which we'll be happy to arrange with Keith directly, and also a proportion with regards to training as well. So we've stopped sharing those, and we're really pleased to hand over to Shaheen, but I will share a copy of your slides, which is there. And over to you, Shaheen. Thank you.
Chris, thank you very much. Can I just check with you first of all, Chris, can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Excellent. And is the video working okay?
Yep, go ahead.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Chris, and thanks for having me along for this webinar. It's really great to be able to speak to you all. I know many colleagues have joined, so really good to be here. Really interested, first of all, by those survey results. So if I sort of remember correctly, I think 76% have either successfully managed to move goods or have had sort of minor problems, which is promising. However, you know, the 14% who I think have fed back that they have had some significant issues, I'd be really keen to understand what some of those issues have been, particularly if those issues continue to cause you problems. However, I hope they sort of came and went, because, you know, we have heard from a few traders and businesses here and there about some of their issues, and we have been able to quickly sort of resolve some of those problems. But if problems do persist, then we'd be really keen to pick up with you. So just by way of introduction, before I go into my segment then, so I'm Shaheen, I work in the Border and Protocol Delivery Group. We're essentially a wing of the Cabinet Office involved in bringing together the various departmental EU exit related plans. So of course, whilst Hmrc have responsibility for customs, DEFRA for agri-food, Department for Transport for traffic management, our objective has always been to ensure that we have a coherent joint up plan across all of those areas to ensure that the border can continue to operate effectively. And hopefully most, if not all of you have seen the border operating model. Keith gave a quick little plug earlier. So we in BPDG produced that border operating model, and that essentially sets out the various processes and requirements for both importing as well as exporting goods. It's available on gov.uk, very easy to find if you just put into a search engine border operating model. So just turning to the first slide, please. Thank you very much, Chris. So this is just a very quick snapshot of some of the key dates With regards to import controls, I know Keith spoke through some of the custom stuff. Just to say that the thinking behind delaying and subsequently phasing in some of our import controls was to provide businesses with more time to prepare following COVID and the detrimental impact that of course had on all businesses. So as you can see, you know, we've sort of phased in the import controls into various stages. So 1st of January, as I say, Keith went into some helpful detail regarding that, but as you can see, there are further controls planned for July, and then from September through to November. These are predominantly in the DEFRA space, covering agri-food and SPS goods, amongst other things, but just to note also that safety and security declarations will of course be required for all imports come 1st of July and beyond. So that's just a quick snapshot of, you know, what's coming up, and as I say, the border operating model does sort of outline the various processes and requirements to follow, and this is all highlighted within there. So just quickly moving on to the second slide, please. So in terms of the situation at the border since 1st of January, I think our sort of analysis at the moment is that things have stayed stable across all locations, which is of course good news. But as I'm sure you'd all expect, we're continuing to keep a very close eye on traffic and freight flows across all locations. Just with regards to systems and GVMS specifically, we have had the odd report, I would say, from businesses and traders about IT issues. But I think when we've engaged with traders and businesses on the whole, we've tended to find that the issues have been more about how to actually access or input data into systems such as GVMS, as opposed to any, you know, significant system errors or outages. So where appropriate, we've gone away, we've made some small tweaks to our comms and guidance for users of GVMS, just to ensure that others don't make similar errors to the ones that we've been seeing and hearing about to date. I'd also probably flag that we have seen a few minor and isolated issues associated with the paperwork or the haulier or the driver sort of not having the right documentation on them. But again, we've been able to solve problems very quickly, I would say, and in collaboration with carriers, hauliers, and our colleagues across government from, for example, Border Force, Hmrc, etc. Perhaps I'll just quickly talk about Dover, and that's because I know there were sort of reports of delays and queues at Dover a week or two ago. I mean, from our perspective, we have people on the ground working very closely with the Port of Dover themselves, and also the carriers such as DFDS, and together we identified that the causes of the queues were due predominantly, I would say, to increases in traffic flows, but also ferry refits. I think there were 4 ferries which were being refitted a few weeks ago, and it's actually quite common for ferries to be refitted at around in January. So we worked very closely with Dover and DFDS to understand the situation, and I think at the moment, you know, we have people on the ground, as I say, and the situation at Dover continues to remain fairly stable. Some of you might have seen reference to Dover TAP being implemented, TAP being the traffic access protocol. So that might sound fairly dramatic, but it's actually fairly commonplace for TAP to be implemented at Dover, and it's a business as usual response to managing vehicle flows. And in fact, it's been implemented, I think, on 30 odd occasions during the course of last year. So a fairly frequent occurrence, I would say. But look, we know, of course, that Dover is a key location for freight and good movement. So we are, of course, continuing to keep an eye on Dover in particular, but other locations across GB are, of course, firmly on our radar as well. A couple of final things, if I may. So turnback volumes continue to remain very low, and they've remained low for quite some time now. That's, of course, very positive. And that's the case both on the GB and the French side of the border, so going both ways. And on the whole, we're seeing freight volumes increase as the weeks pass by. Fingers crossed, we've sort of crossed the peak of COVID. So those sort of volumes will, I hope, continue to move upwards as the weeks and months pass by. But we are, of course, as I said from the outset and following the poll that was undertaken, very keen to hear from you if you are experiencing any ongoing issues or problems with moving goods. We'd be really keen to sort of work with you to understand what those issues are, and I'm sure together we can work to help ensure that you are able to successfully move your goods. Now, just on a sort of wider note, I would just say that this government is very keen to hear from industry colleagues on ways in which we can perhaps make the border work more effectively. There is a lot of work going on across departments in this space, lots of longer term work we're doing to ensure that the border can work effectively, not just as a result of the import controls coming in, but also, you know, as the years pass by, our intention is to have what we're calling the most effective border in the world by 2025, and that's a big piece of work being undertaken by some of my colleagues in the Cabinet Office, but across other departments as well. And in fact, just after Claire from my colleague Claire from Hmrc speaks, Scott Spencer, my colleague, is also working on the Single Trader Window program, and he'll give you a quick overview of that particular piece of work. But I will stop there and hand over to Claire, who's hopefully on the line from Hmrc. So Claire, hopefully you can hear me, and perhaps you have some final comments on some of the points I've made. Thanks.
I can. Thanks, Shaheem. Hi, everyone. I don't have any slides, which is always a good thing when Hmrc are giving a presentation. Our slides can be quite in-depth. I want to apologise. I can see there are lots of questions in the Q&A, but I'm only able to join on my phone. I had to sell a kidney to be able to do this for you guys, but I will pick up the Q&A in conjunction with Keith and Make UK colleagues, and if there are any customs questions, I'll come back on those. But as outlined, the big change for us now is safety and security declarations being due in July 22. Now, in the main, these are the obligation of the carrier of the goods. So, for example, it'll be the haulier if it's roll-on, roll-off movements. But there are new IT systems that they will need to get to grips with. So, hot on the heels of GVMS, they will need to access a system called S&SGB in order to make those entry summary declarations. And Hmrc will be working really strongly, as you can imagine, to get all of those messages out well ahead of July. Touched on compliance. Keith gave you a really good overview on compliance and sort of scared you a little bit around the penalties. Please don't be afraid. We do know that some people have been put in the position that they thought that someone else was making the declaration, and it now turns out that the 175 days have passed and the declarations have not been made, and they have bounced back to their company, essentially. There is a customs information paper. I'm going to pass that through Make UK colleagues to remind you where that is. It does give you guidance on how you can make those declarations, even though they have gone beyond the 175 days. And just to let you know, we are taking a really pragmatic approach to this. We do understand that people have been put sometimes in an awkward position. As well as all of the customs work that's going on, don't forget there are still other changes coming up. We are migrating to the customs declaration service and away from Chief. That is still on track. So imports will need to be on CDS by the 30th of September. That's both supplementary and frontier declarations. And exports will need to be on CDS by the 31st of March 2023. There are sites of information. We've got a single landing page on gov.uk, and there will be webinars and support for people to help them. Turning now to the broader approach to customs, and Shaheem's outlined how we really want to create the world's best border. We are looking at a huge range of customs facilitations and authorizations and how we can make that better. We launched on the 7th of February February a call for evidence, and that's structured around 3 main areas of customs. How we can improve the intermediary sector, how simplified customs declaration procedures can be expanded and made more attractive. And for some of you, that will be in old money customs freight simplified procedures. They've been renamed simplified customs declaration procedure. Not easy to say. And finally, the third one is how transit facilitation can be made more appealing as well. And there is an Hmrc and Treasury webinar on the 2nd of March, and we'll again pass information out on that. And as well as all of that, there is also work going on around authorizations. We're looking at creating digital processes and losing the paper for a lot of authorizations. We want to create self-serve portal to manage your authorizations and create a once and done approach so that you don't need to send us information multiple times. So we'll be coming out and talking to you through Make UK and other organizations about how we can do that. So there's a lot going on. I know there's a lot going on at the moment, but there's a lot going on in the future as well. But I do make that promise to pick up any Q&A that you've put in as well. Back to you, Shaheem.
Thank you very much, Claire. So if I can finally hand over to Scott Spencer, who's my colleague in the Single Trade Window program team, and he will just provide a very brief sort of introduction to the work they're doing on that particular program. Scott, can you hear me?
Hello, Shaheem. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Excellent. Yeah.
Yep.
Brilliant.
All right. We're ready to go. So as Shaheem said, I'm here to do a very brief presentation on the work of the Single Trade Window program. Please forgive me, my internet's not great, so I'm just sticking to a verbal presentation only. So I'm Scott Spencer, so I head up the Program Management Office in the Single Trade Window program, and here just to say, take you briefly, a few slides are our plans for the Single Trade Window system. So if we can move to the first slide, Chris, that would be great. Thank you. So just kicking us off then, what is the Single Trade Window? And as you see right at the top of the slide there, it says it's a single gateway for trade. And now this is a really important point, and I'll refer to this several times during this presentation. It's a single place where all it's not multiple systems, it's where we do all traders can do all their activities they need to complete around the border all in one place. So the idea is, as you can see there, it's defined, the definition of the World Customs Organization is a facility that allows parties involved in trade and transport to lodge standardized information and documents with a single entry point, and it's to enable them to do all their import, export and transit related regularity requirements. So it's going to transform the way traders and government interact at the border. A single gateway, as I said, for sharing information regarding import, export and transit requirements. And the fundamental point, as referred to through several of the other presentations, is an integral part of the UK's 2025 border strategy to be the best border in the world. So currently, at the moment, users have to go onto multiple systems across multiple organizations when carrying out a trade at the border. So this takes obviously time, effort, cost, and can cause frustration, quite rightly. So what the Single Trade Window enables is all traders, agents, intermediaries to submit their information once and once only for a single entry point to complete, as I said earlier, their import, export and transit requirements. So it will allow users to track their consignments and also their progress through the border journey. So that's just a very brief outline of what is the Single Trade Window. Chris, if we could go on to the next slide, that would be great, because it can just illustrate, and this slide just really illustrates some of the points there that I've just been raising. Current model, users have to go through multiple systems from cross government. You've got the 4 departments there. Where we're looking to go with the Single Trade Window is it gets intermediaries, agents, third-party folks can just import their information once into a Single Trade Window system. Then it integrates with all these back office systems in various departments. So it's just, instead of going multiple times, can go into one system only. So that's just, that graphic there really illustrates what the Single Trade Window actually does. If we can move us on then, Chris, to the next slide. And again, here's some of the key features. I won't go through them all, but you can see them pre-border, a simple gateway to trading services, single sign-on for traders. That's that single point of entry only, as you can see there, refers to a single point for submission and management processing, product licenses, certificates, memberships, and declarations. And a very key point here, it contains world-class guidance as well that traders can look at, that they need to undertake the trades that they need to do. And you can see at the border there about supply chain optimization, central inventory systems, so you're able to see all your various trades that you're undertaking, and it automates key trading activities. And you can see there at the bottom is underpinned by data sharing across government departments. So they can share data quicker, data-driven dashboards that enable users to be able to see all their information, all their trades, etc., all in one place, so they can keep track of what's happening. An open API to engender industry innovation with software providers, etc., approach is how the system will be structured, and also able to look at supply chain data quicker, earlier, and feed this into government at a much earlier stage. So if we can just move on to the next slide, Chris. So here's some of the objectives of what we're trying to do, of what the single trade window system would do, is removing duplication, increasing our visibility of items progress, transform the border journeys, we just talked through there, significant efficiencies for users, and improve data integrity and reliability, all at the same point. And a really important point there is it's going to enable improved risking as well, because it will be sharing data across various government agencies at the same time. It's in common feature across various economies across the world. As well, 40 odd, I think, systems are currently in operation, but it will support the UK as a role as innovative and modern trading partner. And again, it goes back, as we've heard here several times, to support the UK's ambition to be the world's most effective border. Can we move last slide, Chris, if that's okay? So we've already started working some initial work on this, and you can see there we have a guidance system in place. Is check how to import or export service on gov.uk. So that's already online for traders, etc., to use. Also, we're looking to integrate there with export guidance that's currently undertaken by DIT, so it's all in one place. And you can see the link there that will take you straight there. So really encourage everyone on the call to get involved, go and have a look, see how the guidance can really help you, and hopefully all in one place import guidance for users to use. So there, and if you've just got any queries or anything you want to find out about, please get in touch. You've got our email address right at the bottom, border.inquiries@cabinetoffice.gov.uk. Anything you want to find out, please get in touch. We'll be very happy to talk and discuss anything that may be on your minds about this. So that's it, Shaheem. I hope that's all right. It's a quick run through of a presentation on the single trade window program.
Great. Thank you very much, Scott, and thanks, Claire, as well, for that. Before I hand back to, is it Richard or Chris?
Yeah.
I was just going to quickly ask, I know we've got a Q&A session coming, but equally questions have come in. So perhaps first of all, if I offer for us to pick up the questions that have come in and provide a consolidated response to all after this webinar. I hope that would help, but equally, of course, we're here for the Q&A as well.
Thank you, Shaheem. Can I just at this point thank all the speakers for their contributions so far, so from Scott, Claire, Shaheem, and also for Keith. I think that will be very helpful, Shaheem, if we can pick up some of the questions and respond to them in slightly slower time after today's session, particularly questions which perhaps have a slightly more technical element to them and may need a bit more research. And certainly for all our participants on the call, our guests as well, that consolidated question and answer sheet will be provided to you in due course, as well as, of course, all the presentations that you've seen so far. What I'm going to do at this stage is ask Chris if he can come forward with some of the questions which have come into us during the course of the session, and maybe theme them as well as obviously request if you have any further questions that you wish to add, please do put them into the Q&A box and we'll get to them as best as we can. So Chris, can you just run through a couple of the themes that have emerged in the question and answer, maybe pick out some specific questions and we'll put those to the panel.
Yes, thanks, Richard, and we've certainly got some time to go through these. To Keith, Shaheem, and Claire in particular, if we take it from the top, because we had this nearly an hour ago in terms from Sylvia about customs valuation and what value of the tooling would be considered acceptable, depreciated value of the machinery or value of the first purchase. Hmrc valuation team was contacted and their response was very basic and didn't answer which value should be used. Claire, can you comment and provide a bit of guidance around that, please? Claire, still with us?
Hello. Sorry, struggling to come off mute. So I think that's one we might need a little bit more information on. It sounds as though it's come into Hmrc. We've given some basic advice, but there is a further part of it that we need to probably talk about. So if we could get a little bit more information, I will come back on that one.
Brilliant. We can absolutely do so. And we'll, as already mentioned, we'll consolidate all these questions and get full answers and share them out, shall I say. Do we need to sign up for the trader support service even if we use a carrier to make our declarations? Who would like to come in on that?
Yeah, I can come in on that one, Chris. Yeah, your freight forwarder carrier can also sign up for the trader support service and make the declaration on your behalf as the declarant using that service. So the straight answer to that is you don't need to sign up. Your carrier can do that for you, but the same rules apply. The declaration is being made on your behalf, so the responsibility for the accuracy of that actual return, that declaration, would be down to you as the importer, even if you were using the facilitation that the forwarder carrier had signed up for the trader support service. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to add to what Keith said and say it's a free service. And I think they regularly include and provide updates, advice, guidance on the trader support service. So well worth signing up for, just to get an understanding of, what changes might be coming up, or using it basically as a communications channel to keep up to date with developments.
Thank you both. We've had a question from Luke. We are a UK-based company, but have a non-resident Iori number in the Netherlands and various EU VAT registrations. Can we import into the EU with this Iori, or do we require PE in Europe? Thanks. Keith.
Yeah, I can probably come in on this one too. Yeah, this is a slightly tricky one. Most of these areas are, to be honest with you. But yeah, I mean, having an EU Iori number or VAT number even, it's difficult, and in some cases, the EU member state might not accept the declaration from a business who either doesn't have a fiscal representative who's responsible for the declarations, or a permanent business establishment of some description. So the options really are to have something business-wise permanently established there, and that includes staff and premises, or having a fiscal representative who's doing that on your behalf. It's quite a tricky area, this one. Just bear in mind that it doesn't matter which customs authority you're dealing with, whether it be one of the EU 27 member states or the UK, they always need a door to knock on in their country because of the rules and regulations. If there's nobody there, in essence, and you're making a declaration with what on the face of it appears to be a valid number, who do they go to if there's an issue or a problem? And if there's something where they need to be and are looking to collect some monies, extra duties, then they're not entitled any longer to come to the UK to do that. So there has to be some footprint in one of the EU member states. And it may well be that the business who's making the asking the question have got that already in place, but it probably needs a little bit further investigation to see what they mean by that, because you can get an Iori number for the EU, which might not entitle you to make customs declarations as imports going in there. Yeah. I don't know whether anybody else has got anything to add on there, but it is.
I think that's a no. We can follow up with Luke there directly, Keith. So we've got a question from Warren Services. Are there EU origin items that aren't eligible for preferential tariff? Is there a list of requirements to meet? If so,
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I mean, I mentioned in the slide set there that the TCA, the Trading Cooperation Agreement, 1250-ish pages. It has from about page 423. So it shows you the kind of anorak that I am with regard to that. It gives you the product-specific rules, and it covers every part, every aspect of the UK tariff. So whatever your first four digits of your commodity code are, you can look it up. But essentially, anything would qualify under the EU/UK origin rules, providing it meets the product-specific rule for that particular tariff heading. But so to answer that is, yeah, everything's eligible for relief depending on the requirements of that particular product. Yeah.
Thank you, Keith. And we have a question from Anonymous, who we have a UK customs broker who we pay the VAT element of the value of goods on import. Should we still be declaring to Hmrc, or should they be doing this on our behalf? I think that's probably one for you, Claire.
Hi, so they can do that on your behalf, but you will want to make sure that they are doing it in the way you wish it to be done. So is it either being paid at the point of import, or do you want it postponed? And if your Iori number is being used, you will be in some cases able to reclaim import VAT. If your Iori number is not used, you will not. So there are different rules around that, but we'll pop some guidance across.
Thank you, Claire. And question from Jim, what record should we keep regarding goods we receive on Incoterm DDP? Our supplier arranges transport and clearance of the goods before delivery to our third-party warehouse. Keith, are you unmuting?
Yeah, deliver duty paid, the Incoterm essentially means that your supplier is delivering them to your doorstep and carrying out all of the meeting all of the costs and carrying out all of the process to get them there, which includes, if it's an EU supplier to you as a UK business, it's worth checking what they're doing with regard to the import, because they would have to have a GB Iori number, for example, in order to make a customs declaration. Now, they may well have, there's two things, a couple of areas that could have here. They may well have an established UK business with a GB Iori number, and that's supplying it to them and then onward to you, which means you really don't have any involvement in the import. That's between the EU supplier and the UK Iori number recipient. But just be careful, because if they're using your Iori number to make your GB Iori number to make the import, then there's a danger there. That's not strictly speaking under the Incoterm TDP, because that responsibility is with the supplier. And if they're doing that, it could be a problem for you, because if you're not in control of what they're putting on that import declaration, then it's going down to your Iori number. You will be charged any duty and VAT, of course, depending on whether you've got a duty deferment account or whether you're using the own VAT accounting, however that's operating. But essentially, if it's DDP and it's strictly by the book, the import is all taken care of before it gets to you.
Brilliant, thank you, Keith. And we've got a rules of origin based question. Manufacturer of jigs and fixtures, they purchase different materials and products to allow its manufacture of these items from all different countries. When exporting these goods, would the country of origin be the UK? We might need a bit of a follow-up there, Anthony, unless anyone wants to come in on the sort of basics of rules of origin now.
The short answer is no, unless you meet the origin rules. It's very common for the manufacturers to import, bring in goods from various countries, including the EU, UK, and third countries. And I keep going back to this, but the product-specific rule will dictate whether you can change the origin of the goods based upon what the ruling is for your 4-digit tariff heading on there. So it's very key that you follow those instructions. Otherwise, if you can't prove the origin of the goods under that rule, then you cannot claim preference in any way, shape or form, either way, I should say.
But
again, sorry, but we can follow up on that one if there's more detail required, yeah.
And moving on to the next question, can we check using Hmrc MSS import data to see if a full declaration has been made on our behalf, or where we need a delayed supplementary declaration within 175 days? Is that one for you, Claire?
So you can, in those MSS reports, there are 4 standard reports available. They cover import items, import entry, tax lines and exports. And then there's a layer of detail behind that. So yes, you should be able to see what has been submitted.
Thank you, Claire. Quick question from Paul. We are asked by EU customers for long-term supplier declarations. Can we still provide these documents?
Yes.
I was going to say it's Claire. I was going to say yes, but Keith, can you tell us what page it's on?
I'm sorry, I might have to let you down here. The simple answer is yes, but again, it's covered in the TCA, and the actual suppliers declaration statements there's a template for a long-term suppliers declaration and a simple suppliers declaration on there that you can use on your commercial documents to follow those goods. So simple answer is yes. Under the TCA, you can still supply a long-term supplier declaration.
Super. And a bit of a longer question here. If we fit a motor to our products, which costs more than the actual unit we have manufactured, are we okay to change the commodity code to UK, or would that still need to be in its original company? Our product cannot operate without the motor, and therefore it is a fundamental part.
I'm a little bit confused by that question. I mean, if you're bringing in components and materials to manufacture, if this was an engine, for example, then you were putting it in a motor car, the finished product is a motor car, it's not an engine. I'm not sure whether we're looking at origin here. Is it okay to change the commodity code? Of course you can, yeah. The commodity code is applicable to the product you're supplying, for example. So if you're buying in an engine, that's what you will bring in. It will have a commodity code as an engine. If you're putting that together and manufacturing a motor vehicle, a motor car, then the commodity code for a motor car is different. And that happens on a daily basis within manufacturing. So it is okay to change that. I'm not entirely sure. Perhaps again we can follow this one up, because it's not making a huge amount of sense to me. But a phone call or a follow-up question, I'm quite happy to take that.
Yes, Keith. If that was you, that came through anonymously, so please do let us know who asked that question. I will jump a question for you, Shaheen, because is there anywhere we can find the proposed changes for July 2022, which you did refer to in your presentation? Is there anywhere we can find a broader view of that?
Yeah, sure, Chris. So the border operating model, page 70, it's a long document, it's 159 pages, but I promise you it's very easy to navigate through it and find what you're looking for. So we've actually separated it by sort of by date. So the controls that are coming in July are under stage 3, as we call it in the border operating model. So if you look in the border operating model under stage 3, it sets out all the changes that come into effect in July, which mainly fall in the DEFRA space, but there are other bits and pieces to be aware of. So I would highlight that to people, but of course we'll follow up and respond to the full Q&A and sort of summarize as well.
Shaheen. And we've got a bit of a comment on GBMS not recognising export declarations despite following the full guidance. Is the GBMS technical support team looking to fix the problem and improve the situation there? Perhaps more of a comment. I don't know if Shaheen, you wanted to come in on that at all.
It's Claire from Hmrc. I mean, I'd be interested whether that's a split DUCA or a single DUCA, but maybe we can again get a bit more information. There have been some as Shaheen outlined, some common issues that we've had with GVMS, but by and large, those are ironed out now. So I'd be keen to have a little bit more information to answer that one.
And what is the ENS Safety and Security Declaration, and what type of export input goods are that involved? I think that was in your presentation, Shaheen.
Do you want me to take that one, Shaheen?
Go ahead, Claire.
So the ENS declarations, these are the safety and security declarations that have been waived right up until the 1st of July 2022, but they will be required on all imports from that date. And there is some really good guidance on this. If you are the trader, you don't need to worry too much about this. It is the carrier who is responsible for those safety and security declarations, but they are due on all goods.
Thank you, Claire. And back to you again is from an anonymous attendee. Is it possible to arrange a relationship between a company and Hmrc by having a single Hmrc point of contact? Is there such a relationship can start?
Well, unfortunately, only if you are a large business can we afford that luxury for you. But we do have a fantastic customs and international trade helpline, and we've got other points of contact and information as well. So we'll put those out through Make UK.
Thank you, Claire. And somebody responds saying thank you to you, Claire, earlier. Can you check all customs declarations which have been made against your Iori or use multiple FFWs? Keith, you're nodding. Is that just a simple yes?
I think actually Claire's covered this really. MSS data for chief, under chief, if you apply for and pay for, I think it's £240 plus VAT per year, pay for your import declarations, you'll receive these monthly, and every import that has been made under your Iori number as the importer will be listed on there. So, and you can go back, I think it's 12 months, maybe Claire can correct me on that, but you can go back if you're looking to do some kind of reconciliation where things may have not worked out correctly with regard to delayed declarations, etc. But the answer to that is yes. Management support data, if you sign up for that while we're using Chief, obviously this is, we're drawing to an end of Chief, but it's my understanding that you can apply for that now under Chief and get that data subsequent to that. Once CDS is fully up and running, it's my understanding that you'll be able to access that information through the CDS system without having to pay for it.
That's correct. That's correct, Keith. A bonus to the Customs Declaration Service is that you will get access to digital dashboards and real-time data.
And we've got a couple of follow-up questions, so answer these quickly. Can you provide more info on GVMS via email? If yes, what's the email address? If you want to contact Make UK, email address for these sorts of queries, brexit@makeuk.org. We'd be more than happy to make the necessary connections there, but that will come out in the follow-up email as well. And one of the much earlier questions follow-up we had is there an EU version of the MSS for imports under EU Iori?
I'm not aware, I'm not an expert in other member states' computer mainframes for customs. I mean, obviously Chief we're operating under at the moment, CDS will come in, but I mean the German system Atlas, they're all different. So hand on heart, I wouldn't be able to say that you could actually get the same data from the individual mainframes for the other 27 member states. I'd be surprised, for example, if Atlas, the German system, didn't do that, because it always had a few more bells and whistles than Chief did. But hand on heart, I can't confirm that.
Thank you, Keith.
Chris, sorry, I was just going to go back to the GVMS question.
Yes.
Claire will shoot me down if I'm wrong here, but I think we have some recorded webinars on GVMS and sort of how to navigate through the system. They should be on gov.uk, but equally, again, we can ensure that we include the relevant links to those webinars when we provide the full Q&A.
And I won't shoot you down, Shaheem. We've got some fantastic webinars, very comprehensive webinars on GVMS.
Thank you both. I'm just scanning the other questions. Lots of similar types of questions, but I think some of which will need to be answered offline. A few on the rules of origin.
There was one, Chris, about the correlation of tariffs from 2021 to 2022. And just to say, not only is that available, but it's available in both Word and Excel formats.
Brilliant. Well, I think we'll stop our Q&A there because I think we've touched on large elements of
Chris, it's Scott here. There's a question around SDW and CDS, and it is quite a simple answer. Yes, it will connect. It will connect with all government systems. So that's the answer to that. They will stay live, those back office systems, but it's a one-stop portal into all government systems.
Brilliant. Thank you, Scott. And as I say, we've covered most of our questions, and if not questions of we haven't answered, we've covered in some sense from the others, but we will also follow up if you do want a more specific conversational response from us. So if I hand back to Richard now for kind of closing remarks and also how you get in touch with us for those specific answers.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you all very much for sending your questions through. As we said before, we'll consolidate the questions and send out responses though in slightly slower time. In addition to the presentations that you've had today, we will also send out to you participants as well. As has been referred to, very happy for you to send questions to us outside of this webinar. The details of that came on the screen earlier, and we'll circulate those. But certainly, if you have very specific questions relating to the topics discussed today, please do get in contact with us via the email address at brexit.makeuk.org, and we'll be able to respond to you on that. It's been a very good session. We are very grateful to our colleagues from joining us this afternoon from Cabinet Office, from Shaheem and Scott, and also from Claire at Cabinet Office, and also Keith for joining us to provide some overview on customs. All our participants have been attended previous sessions, so they're very familiar faces to us on these sessions, and we're very grateful for their time in coming to them. We are following up on a number of points relating to the Trade and Cooperation Agreement in future webinars. Details of those will come out in due course, but just to highlight some of the topics that we'll be covering, we will be taking the opportunity to look in slightly more detail at the overall Trade and Cooperation Agreement on a session looking at key elements of how that agreement has taken shape and future aspects of it, and we'll have a range of speakers to bring their insights into that too. And looking ahead to a specific change that is taking place from the 1st of January next year, that's the adoption in the UK of a new product labelling system, otherwise known as UKCA. Significant changes to the way in which products will be able to be placed on the Great British market, as well as your international obligations for placing goods on international markets, including, of course, Europe. So we'll have a dedicated session looking at the changes to market regulation affecting the placing of goods on the market here and in Europe, and we'll be able to take your questions from a range of experts that we will bring together for that particular session. Details of those particular webinars will come forward in due course, and we're looking to further enhance the programme during the course of this year, picking up topics of interest to members and bringing the relevant expertise to those points. If there aren't any other questions or any closing remarks, thank you all for attending this session this lunchtime. Thanks again to expert professional contributors to it from across the piece, and we look forward to seeing you again on a future webinar in the very near future. So thank you all for attending.
Thank you, everybody.